We are kicking off a new series today. I love my church. And quite frankly, I've never done a series called I Love My Church as long as I've been doing ministry. But I just know this is where we're supposed to be. As I met, in the beginning of this year, we were charting our year and what the Lord would have for us. And we're starting a new series today called I Love My Church. Now, I Love My Church is not just about today, it's about the next month. And we're going to culminate on March 31st, Sunday, March 31st, is I Love My Church Day. Okay, now on Sunday, March 31st, between here and there, I'm going to just talk about a culture of investing and inviting. And that on the 31st, we will all be inviting people to come on the 31st. On the 31st, I Love My Church Day out in the parking lot. We will have inflatables set up, a food truck. There's going to be a men's salsa making competition. We need some people willing to be taste testers. I will not, because if I walk by a jalapeno, I cry. So we need taste testers. My son Parker says he'd like to be a taste tester. So, but Living Word Springs, our Spanish church, will be joining us, and they're going to be making salsa. I'm fearful. But that's going to be a great day. I Love My Church Day. So this month we're going to be talking about I Love My Church for I Love My Church Day. In reference to that, we're going to have some t-shirts available for you about I Love My Church Day. If you would like a t-shirt, you'd like to have us order one for you, there's a sheet back at the connection table. And we need you to really put your name and size on it today. And that way we're sure to get you the right size and not a belly shirt. I'm going to move on. So we would love to we just see everybody wearing some City Church swag, but need you to be sure to get on that list. And we're going to have a great week of loving our church and creating a culture of investing and inviting. So I hope you're ready for a great journey. If you have your Bibles, you turn to Luke chapter 15. If you don't have your Bibles, but you'd like to read along in a Bible, if you'll slip your hand up, our guys will put a Bible in your hand. If you're in this room and you'd like to read a paper Bible rather than the Bible in the sky, our guys will put a Bible in your hand. And if you would like, take that Bible with you. Take it home, give it to somebody. Please feel free to take that with you. Luke chapter 15 in the New Testament, as Pastor Trey referred to earlier, Luke is an interesting author. Luke was a physician, and so he was very detail-oriented. Luke also, as you study, is arguably one of the greatest historians that has ever lived or written. He has other works that weren't included in the narrative of the Bible, but Luke was amazing. And so we're going to be looking at this chapter. I'm going to read the full chapter to you today. This will be our foundation for what we will be looking at for the next 4 weeks. So I want to read through Luke 15 with you, and then we're going to take a journey through this incredible story. Luke 15:1. Now the tax collectors and the sinners were all drawing near to him, being Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes grumbled, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable: "What man of you, having 100 sheep, if he has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the one that's lost, until he finds it? And when he's found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, and saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep that was lost.' Just so I tell you, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no repentance." Verse 8, "Or that woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, she does not light a lamp and sweep the house and seek diligently until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost.' Just so I tell you, there is joy before the angels of God over one sinner who repents." And he said, "There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the property that's coming to me.' And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had, took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living." Verse 14, "And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in the country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of the country, who sent him to the field to feed the pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods of the pigs, that the pods of the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father. I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And when he arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring a fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this, my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost, but now he is found. And they began to celebrate. Now the older son was in the field, and he came and drew near to the house, and he heard music and dancing, and he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brothers come home, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he's received him back in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, look, these many years I have served you. I have never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a goat, and I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, son, your way, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this, your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. Lost and he is found. Let's pray one more time. Jesus, I thank you for your great grace. I thank you that we get to be in your presence today. And I pray that your Holy Spirit speaks to us. Anything I have planned that I'm not supposed to say, you remove it. And anything you want said, plant it in my heart. I thank you that you love us so much that we will never comprehend the size of that love. And all City Church said, amen. I'm the youngest of 6 children. My sister, and then 5 boys. 5 boys, the brothers, the Smith brothers. We grew up the Smith brothers. And we were tight Smith brothers. Like, we had each other's back. One way that we had each other's back is we had a tree in our front yard that extended over the street. The branches extended over the street. So we would take clothes and stuff them full of leaves and make it look like a person. Oh, wait. And one of us would climb up in the tree on the branch over the street and wait for a car. And as a car was coming, we would drop that dummy full of leaves on the car. To be sure the guy in the tree doesn't get caught, the other 4 would run to make it look like they did it, because we had each other's back. I was telling the guys yesterday, we grew up, we had 15 horses growing up. And so around our corral in Montana, we had an electric fence. An electric fence, if you're not familiar, was a silver wire that lined the barrier of our corral that our horses lived in. And we had a cousin named David. David came over and was at our house playing, and David looked at that silver wire and said, what is that? Well, what an opportunity. On the electric fence, back on the barn, we could see there was a red light, and it would strobe. And whenever there was power in the wire, the strobe would be on. But when it was off, we knew that the wire was not hot. And so we said to cousin David, oh, David, bro, that is silver licorice. And the horses love silver licorice. And he's like, no, I don't believe you. We're like, dude, it is. He's like, no. So we Smith boys watch the light on the shed. Light goes out. We lick the licorice. Oh, I see why the horses like that licorice. And he's like, nah. We're like, bro, fine, don't have any. We're walking away. The 5 Smith boys are walking away. And we hear, and we quickly turn around, and David has bitten the wire. But David has braces. And David's mouth is now magnetized shut. And the strobe isn't long enough for him to unlock his jaw. So we have a choice. set David free, or laugh. Luckily, my dad was there and set David free. David had a blister in the corners of his mouth, across his tongue. Cousin David didn't visit anymore. He just stopped coming over. I don't remember him being at our house one more time. Never saw Cousin David again. We were brothers, and we had each other's back. And Luke, this story we just read, is one parable. I want to remind you, it's one parable. It's Jesus, and his audience is sinners and Pharisees. World and the church is his audience. And he tells one parable. It's got 3 parts. We're going to talk about all 3 parts the next 4 weeks. Today, we're going to talk about the last part of the whole parable, about the brothers. We're going to talk about the brothers. Jesus is being criticized by the church for hanging out with the sinners. And he tells this story. And he concludes it with these brothers, which leads us to have to ask a question. Am I my brother's keeper? Or am I responsible for my brother? Here's the deal. This does not need to be some kind of an obligation. Oh, now that I'm a Jesus follower, I have an obligation. No, this is a reaction to great grace. When you have good news, you can't help but share with other people the great grace that changed your life, and you can't help but see that other people get the opportunity to have a part of that great grace. So, throughout time, we're faced with this question: am I responsible for my brother? As we read about these 2 brothers, and do I prioritize my church? Let me read the last part of that parable to you again, just the story of the brothers to refresh us. It starts in verse 11. And Jesus said, there was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the shared property that's coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Now, when you support them, we land on that, I'll come back to it, but he divided his property between them. In other words, all right, younger bro, you get this. Older bro, you get this. Older bro, you're now in charge. Like, you're the man. This is your stuff. I divided it among you. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey to a far country where he squandered his property on reckless living. And when he spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of the country, who sent him into his field to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods of the pigs that they ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise. I'll go to my father. I'll say to him, Father, I have sinned against you before you. I will no longer be worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, felt compassion, and ran and embraced and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. I love this. The father doesn't even respond. Doesn't even respond to the son. Doesn't even. But the father said to his servants, quickly bring the best. Quickly bring the best. Quickly bring the best. Bring the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For my son was dead and he's alive again. He was lost, now he's found. And they began to celebrate. Now the older son was in the field, and he came and drew near to the house, and he heard music and, yeah, see, I knew you wouldn't say it. Church, we can't talk about dancing. Now Jesus, I believe, likes to dance. I believe Jesus likes to party. I believe the first time we see Jesus record a miracle, he was at a party. He was at a wedding. He was celebrating. He was dancing. I think Jesus had some moves. I think, wow, I think he could do it. I think he was staying alive. It's a horrible pun, but I said it. And he called one of the servants and asked, what do these things meant? The servant said, bro, haven't you heard? Like, your brother came home. Your dad, well, he killed the fattened calf because he received him back safe and sound. But the brother was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and treated him. Watch this. Father came out and said, hey, come on in. But he answered, look, these many years I've served you, I've never disobeyed. Bro, you just did. Like, never mind. Never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a goat that I can celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours, watch this, when the son of yours comes who has devoured your property with prostitutes. How do we know that? That's not what it says. It said he had reckless living. Sometimes we accuse people of what's in our heart, not theirs. You killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. Like I gave it to you. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this brother was dead and is alive. He was lost, and he's found. It's as though Jesus is telling this story, and he's saying, look, if you want to know why I'm hanging out with who I'm hanging out with, first you have to know who I am. You need to understand who I am. So let me tell you this story, so maybe you understand who I am. So if you understand who I am, you understand why I'm hanging out with who I'm hanging out with. And as we read this, it's interesting how Jesus transitions this. If you read these three parts, first there's the lost sheep, and the shepherd went after the sheep. And then there's a lost coin, and the widow went after the coin. But the third part, we got a lost brother, and nobody's looking for him. Why isn't anyone looking for the younger brother? Why isn't anybody? Why isn't there someone, hey, Bobby, where are you? These two sons, they represent the kind of people that are in the audience. And the reason that we don't see it, we don't see in the storyline, because Jesus is pointing out to his audience, he's pointing this out to his audience, making it clear that there's hurting brothers and sisters out there that you're not chasing after because you're so busy being angry at the ones that are attracted to me. He's saying, remember his audience. We wrap up this story, and he's saying to his audience, you need to get things together. I'm trying to point out to you that there's lost, hurting brothers. Oh, but he's lost of his own volition. I'm not even going to argue that. Remember who was complaining, and I think these guys were saying, "Listen, Jesus, what are you doing? You're hanging out with these sinners." Here's what I hear them saying: "Why are you validating bad people? Why are you even validating their behavior?" And Jesus is saying, why aren't you going to get your brothers and sisters? We're really basing this journey the next few weeks on the first question we see recorded that ever asked of God. The first question ever recorded that we see asked of God, it comes in Genesis, and it's the first time we ever see anyone ask God a question. And God's hanging out, shows up with a couple of brothers. We got Cain and Abel. God shows up, asks a few questions, 3, 4, 5 questions of Cain. Which, by the way, that might just change your whole social life if you ask people more questions than they ask you, rather than just tell them how cool you are. Just a thought. God asks 3 or 4 or 5 questions, and then Cain asks the first question we see recorded. Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? And for the rest of the narrative of the Bible, the answer is unequivocally yes. Not out of guilt, not out of religious obligation, not out of doctrinal content, not out of a denominational membership, out of grace. Out of great grace. And the rest of the story, to the end of the book of Revelation, is great grace showing us how to love those that are hurting rather than judge those that are attracted. Luke chapter 10, verse 2. Get ready for this because it's going to take a different look than you probably ever have seen. And he, being Jesus, said to them, his disciples, his followers, those that love Jesus, the young men, the teenage boys, approximately 3.5 years, walk around with Jesus. He's talking to them. And he said to them, hey, bros, the harvest is plentiful. The problem is laborers. Now, we can read and go, well, the harvest is plentiful and the laborers are few. No, he's saying there's a whole lot of people that need to hear the good news, and you're not very good at sharing it, but you're really good at judging others. The problem is the laborer. He says, therefore, watch this, pray earnestly, be deliberate, be decisive to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers. Watch this. Ask God to send out laborers. Ask God to send out laborers. And I love this. He goes, oh, by the way, I'm sending you. Oh, by the way, there's a great harvest out there. Problem is there's not very many laborers. And if you really are genuinely concerned about those laborers, you are one. You are one. It falls back on that statement of love your neighbor like yourself, does it not? When we say, remember the question was asked, well, like just exactly, let's clarify this. Don't we like to do that? Let's clarify this. See where I don't fit. Who's my neighbor? I want to be clear. Who's my neighbor? And so Jesus tells this amazing story. We call it the Good Samaritan. But you remember there's a dude going up Jericho to Jerusalem, and he gets mugged, he gets beat up, and it says that he's left half dead. Now, in a Hebrew world, as they're hearing Jesus speak, in a Hebrew world, they listen with questions. Who am I in this story? Who am I in this story? And Jesus is really good at making you work and finding who you are in the story. So this dude gets beat, half dead. The Bible says he's half dead. Along comes a priest, goes the other side of the road. The religious leaves the guy half dead. Well, probably his fault. Probably didn't go to church enough. Probably didn't tithe. Probably didn't sing and worship. Probably didn't read his Bible. His fault. Then a Pharisee walks by, which would be representative of the political system. Well, he probably voted for the other party. Deserves what he got. And then it says this Samaritan strolls by. Samaritan breaks all the barriers. This Samaritan, he broke the religious barrier. He broke the racial barrier. He broke the cultural barrier. He broke the economic barrier. He broke all the barriers. This Samaritan broke all the barriers. Picks up the dude, puts him on his donkey, takes him to town, says to the town guy at the inn, get him healthy. Here's extra money to get him healthy. If it's not enough, I got more. Story ends. Guys are listening thinking, so who am I? Am I the priest? Am I the Levite? Or am I the Samaritan? And I believe Jesus is saying, no, you're missing it. You're the dude that's half dead. And you need someone to come into your life and bring you some resurrection and pay all your bills and have more than enough for when you make your next mistake. That's who you are. That's who you are. And you love people like that guy felt loved. See, we got to stop trying to, who's my neighbor? The dude felt love. And we got to go love like that guy felt loved. But the truth of the matter is, culturally, the older brother makes sense, doesn't he? If we're honest, the older, let's stop beating him up for a minute and just let's stop and think about this. Remember, like that little brother was rebellious. Like he got his money and he went out and wasted it, and he blew it all. And the older brother, it's like, what? No, why are we celebrating this lifestyle? I'm thinking people listening to the story are going, oh, finally, someone's making sense. We're with the big brother. Yeah. What are we doing? What are we doing? And then it's odd. You know what? The story ends. And we're like, Jesus? Couple questions. Like, is there any reconciliation? Like, who barbecued the cow? Think about that. But what we struggle with is if the older brother showed up and went, yes, he's back. He's back, bro. Nice shoes. What? And that robe, what? Dad give that to you? Right on. Where'd you get that ring? Where'd you get that ring? Did your husband give that to you? Huh? What if he showed up and said, this is so awesome. You went and spent all your money. You have nothing left. Now I'm in charge and I have to take care of you. And we're killing cows and feeding you and dressing you. This is the best day ever. We would go, dude, what is wrong with you? What is wrong? Why are you celebrating that? That's how we'd look at it. Is it not? Because the normal big brother reaction is, you got yourself into this. Get yourself out. We read the story, and the truth of the matter is we're left wanting the big brother. We're left watching Jesus put in us a desire that really redeems the story of Cain and Abel, doesn't it? Because you read Cain and Abel, who would want a big brother? But we watch this parable bring a depth of redemption, and we're left with, I want a big brother. I want that big brother. And Jesus says, I'm that big brother. I'm the one to come looking for you. I think if we're honest, inside of each of us is a piece of both brothers. The good news is God can't give up on you. Romans 5:8 says this. It says, God showed his love for us while we were still sinners. He showed his love for me while I was still a sinner. When I think about that for any length of time, it blows my mind. John 15:13 says, greater love has no one than this, than someone lays down his life for his friends. See, the audience was really struggling because Jesus took women, and he took children, and he took the diseased, and he took the racial barrier, and he took the economic barrier, and he took everyone that felt marginalized and made them feel important. Jesus took all of marginalized society and said, no, you're in. You're in. And when the Pharisees said, what do you mean they're in? They haven't done what we've done to get in. Jesus said, why are you concerned about their inness? It's your inness you should be concerned about. And if they're in because of what I did, and you're in because of what you did and what I did, you're more in than they're in. So why would you worry about their being in? Exactly. Watch it on YouTube. Jesus says, By the way, I'm one that sticks closer than a brother. Now, let that land. How is that possible? I'm one that sticks closer than a brother. You can't offend me. You can't make me wish I didn't know you. I hope I get to share my inheritance with you. I'm so glad Dad didn't listen to you and he put the best robe on you. I'm so excited that your journey's going to change because you got new shoes. I'm overjoyed. See, the ring in those days was symbolic of identity. Kings would use their signet rings to seal a wax seal. Say, this is the identity of the one that wrote this. These pieces that the dad gave to the boy aren't accidental or incidental. They're very clear. Jesus is saying to his audience, because he returned to me, his identity changed. And I put a ring on it. And we celebrated. Church, we get so easily caught up in reversing Jesus' mode of operation, his new iOS operating system. See, we want to lead with structure, and then we'll follow with love. Like when you do what I tell you to do and act like I do, I'll love you. But Jesus is completely opposite of that. He leads with love and then follows it up with structure. Every time. The adulterous woman thrown at his feet. Where's your accusers? There aren't any. I don't accuse you either. Now go. And then he follows it up with structure. And sin no more. I love you. I forgive you. Now go. Here's the structure. Don't do that anymore. Jesus sets demons out of another guy. He says to the guy, listen to me. Listen to me. Do what's right, because they'll come back 7 times stronger. He leads with love. He follows with structure. Every time. Doubting Thomas. Didn't believe Jesus was real. I don't buy it for a minute. You other 11 are lying to me. Jesus did not show up. Can you imagine that? They're in the upper room, doors locked, windows locked. They're in fear. They're scared. They're trying to convince Thomas Jesus was here. Thomas is like, no, listen, you're all too scared. He wasn't here. You're a bunch of chickens. He wasn't here. Doors are locked. Jesus comes in. And first thing he says is, don't be afraid. How'd you get in here? First question, how'd you get in here? And he walks over to Thomas. And he doesn't scold him. He doesn't berate him. He doesn't judge him. He doesn't accuse him. He says, Thomas, Bo, there's only one thing that exists in heaven that's man-made, and it's my scars. Feel free to touch them. Thomas touched him. For the first time in all of the narration of the Bible, we hear this statement, my Lord and my God. It's the first time. And after the revelation of grace, Jesus says, and you know what? The people coming after you are going to be more blessed because they believe without touching. He always leads with love and follows with structure. We've got to be about investing and inviting. You can ask all the questions. Well, you just want the church to grow. Yes. Don't healthy things produce fruit? Isn't what's healthy growing? Yes. But it's way bigger than that, church. It's way deeper than that. We're talking about the souls of mankind. And if we really believe what we say we believe, there has to be something in us that compels us to share the life-changing message of Jesus Christ. And we can't be stuck in fear. We can't be stuck in, I'm not educated. Are you kidding me? Did you hear about Peter and Paul? They were uneducated, untrained. All they did was hang out with Jesus. And you can say to me, wow, I just don't know. I just don't know how that really is going to influence my life. How do I invite my neighbors? Act like Jesus to your neighbors. Here's the deal. The last thing Jesus said to his boys was, go make disciples. I'm going to talk about this next week, but I think we've made the Great Commission the great option. Yeah, maybe. You know, quite frankly, shame on us if our very temporal lifespan on this piece of dirt called Earth. Shame on us if our calendar is so full, I don't have time to live, love, and look like Jesus. Shame on me if I believe that there's a heaven and a hell, and I'm not doing my best to rescue those that are close to the edge. Shame on me. Shame on me. Jesus says, freely you've received, freely give. Here's the deal. In my life, in my walk with Jesus, oh, he's very real. And the way that I live my life, I'll tell you right now, if when I die, I'm completely wrong, I've lost nothing. But if someone is 1% wrong about Jesus, they lose everything. Why doesn't that concern me? I will tell you this. I'll tell you this right now, as Abel, if you'll come up. At City Church, we are not about picking political parties. We are not about setting denominational boundaries. I think if you're around here very much, you know we belong to an organization called Better Together, 9 different churches crossing denominational boundaries, Methodist and Wesleyan, Assembly of God, and non-denominational, Baptist, Vineyard. We come together and we lay down those things and we say, look, the message of Jesus is way bigger than those things. And it's fine to have those distinctives. But today, there's one message. And God has called us, I believe, if you're a part of this community called City Church, in this city called El Mirage, God has called us. We unequivocally have something to answer. Are we our brother's keeper? Yeah. Absolutely. And I tell you this, City Church, we will be the big brother that should go out. We will be the big brother. We have received our inheritance. We get more when we get there. And right now, you may not have the perfect life, but I'm going to tell you what, one day that pain will be gone. One day that brokenness won't exist. One day his return. One day you're going to meet him face to face. I believe that with everything in me. But until then, we have a job to do, and we unequivocally are responsible for our brothers. We cannot sit and accuse and say, how can you hang out with those people? We cannot be the half of the audience that is making fun of Jesus and attacking Jesus. I would rather be the half of the audience that is attracted to Jesus. I sent out a text this week. Many of you in this room received it and responded, and many that are not in this room received it. And I sent out, how can I specifically pray for you? How can we at City Church be specifically praying for you this week? There are some really amazing heroes out there that when the response is, I'm dealing with cancer, or a response is, I miss my kids, or the response is, my marriage is ending, or the response is, I'm so lonely. Those are the heroes. How those people, some of the responses I got, I'm like, how do you get up every morning? I don't know. But I know this place, this church, We're going to be the big brother that goes and gets them. Because they're out there by an overwhelming number. Is this about loving a building or loving the address in Primrose Street? Or loving this collective us for no more? No, this series is about church. That has the greatest message of all time. Will you stand with me, please? Wow. I need to ask, I need to address something here in the church. If you're in this room and the if you're in this room and the church has hurt you, I'm sorry. The bride should never do some of the things it's done. But I know it does some crazy things. Tracy and I have walked through some crazy stuff. But before we go any further this morning, if you're in this room and the church has hurt you, judged you, neglected you, ignored you, made you feel less than adequate, you don't fit. I love the church. I love the bride. And I'm sorry that the bride would behave like that. But that doesn't excuse us from inviting people to get to know the bride. And I apologize on behalf of the bride. But the bride has the greatest message. And it's been used for its own gain. It's been used for manipulation. It's been used to hurt. And I know that. We will not do that as City Church. We will not do that. We will not be the older brother accusing. We will be the big brother and go find Bobby. Paul, if you'll hit the lights for me. Abel's going to lead us in a final song, and then Brian will dismiss us. For just a moment of privacy, if you'd bow your heads and close your eyes, just for your neighbors and friends. If you're in this house today and you really would like to have a relationship restored, or for a first time, meet this Jesus, the big brother. If you're in this room and your relationship with him hasn't quite been what you feel like it ought to be, or you just need to take another step of faith. If that's you, and at the count of three, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. And why do I ask you to raise your hand? Because I do believe what happens on the inside, we really make more solid when we act on it on the outside. So on the count of three, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand to really let him be like Thomas, my Lord and my God. One, it is the best decision you'll ever make in your life. Two, he will never leave you. He sticks closer than a brother. Three, can I pray with you? Will you slip your hand up today? Thank you. Thank you. so much. I'm going to pray with you. Thank you. And those of you that raised your hands while I'm praying, I'm just going to ask you to say yes out loud. Why? Because the Bible just simply says that if I believe in my heart and confess with my mouth, then I'm good. And so while I pray, I just ask you to say yes. Just agree with what I pray. Don't worry about anything else. Abel will lead us in a song of worship. We'll tell God how much we love him, and then Brian will dismiss us. But right now, let me pray over you. Father, right now, I thank you for your great grace. And for those that raise their hands, and maybe those that should have and didn't, I ask that you meet them right now. Lord, that you remind them that you are the big brother. You will come after them. You will chase after them. That your heart is for them, and you've never, ever been against them. You don't repent their creation nor the gifting you gave them. That you have good plans for them, a destiny and a hope and a future. And not to harm them, but to give them all of the kingdom's love and grace. Lord, today, for those that raise their hands, an encounter with you is what needs to happen. Not just words from a pulpit, not just songs on a screen, but an encounter with Jesus. And that we would set it up about that, not a doctrine or a denomination or any legalism, but today would be a moment with Jesus. And as they even say yes with their mouth today, your word is clear that you meet them right where they're at and extend amazing grace.